So this week you guys sent in some really interesting stuff about this like big change that's happening with retirement in America.
Yeah, exactly. It's the articles you sent in, they all point to this like trend of more and more older Americans, working past that like typical retirement age, like what it all means for, for the future.
Yeah, totally. And I think for this deep dive, what we want to do is really get into like why people are working longer,
right,
past that age that we think of as the retirement age, and like pull out the biggest takeaways from all these articles for you guys listening.
Yeah, definitely.
And to just jump right into it, the story of Walter Carpenter, this 69-year-old dish handler at Mad River Glen Ski Resort in Vermont,
right,
really kind of caught my eye.
Yeah, his situation is really something because at 69, he's doing this really physically demanding work.
Wow.
Dealing with bad knee and hip problems, and he even has peripheral neuropathy.
Oh, wow.
And on top of all that, he's walking like 5 miles during his shift.
Oh.
And his reason for working is so simple.
Yeah.
And it's just that he doesn't have retirement savings.
Right.
And I feel like that just brings our whole discussion into focus right away.
Yeah, totally. And it's not just Walter. The articles point out that about 19% of people 65 and older in the U.S. are actually working these days.
Wow.
And that's almost double what it was like 40 years ago.
Really? Wow.
Yeah, 40 years ago it was only 10%.
That's a huge jump.
Huge jump, yeah. And Vermont is a really interesting case here. They have the highest rate in the country.
Oh, wow.
With about 26% of their residents 65 and older still working.
So like over a quarter?
Over a quarter, yeah.
Wow.
And even at a place like Mad River Glen, like half of their staff is over 65.
That's crazy.
I know. It's kind of amazing. And as we look through these articles, what's so interesting is like there's two sides to this. Some people like John Mandeville, this 75-year-old guy, he's the director of the Central Vermont Council on Aging.
Okay.
And then there's Kim Hopper. She's a 72-year-old prep cook. They're both still working, but for them it's about like staying engaged and connected, and they actually want to work.
They want to?
Yeah. Okay. But then for a lot of older workers, it's totally different.
Right.
This guy, Craig Copeland at the Employee Benefit Research Institute, he says for about half of them, it's just financial necessity.
That makes sense.
Yeah, whether it's health issues or bad investments or even just having jobs that didn't have good retirement benefits.
Right.
They just have to keep earning money to pay their bills.
Yeah, and that's a big point in a lot of these articles, right?
Sure, that's
like more and more people are having to work just to get by.
Exactly. And it really makes you think, like, what happened to that whole idea of retiring comfortably at 65?
Yeah, like that golden years kind of thing.
Exactly. Like you work your whole life and then you get to just relax.
Right.
But it seems like for a lot of people, that's becoming like a distant dream.
Yeah, more like a fantasy than reality these days, huh?
I know. And there's a bunch of reasons why that's happening. Inflation is a big one.
Of course, everything costs more. So your savings just don't go as far.
Exactly. And then the stock market, it's always up and down.
Yeah, that definitely doesn't help if you're depending on investments.
No. And then this whole shift from pensions to 401ks.
Right. So instead of having that steady income from a pension, you're now responsible for managing your own savings and investments.
Right. And that's a lot of pressure on people.
It is, especially if you're not a financial expert.
Exactly. And John Mandeville, he talked about this, how the high cost of living is just really straining retirement budgets.
It's not just about having enough saved up. It's about making sure it lasts.
Yeah. And then on top of that, one of the articles mentioned that half the babies born in the U.S. in 2007 are projected to live to 103.
Wow. That's a long time.
I know. So people are living longer, which means their retirement savings have to last even longer.
Right. And that kind of throws the whole traditional retirement plan out the window.
It does. And this is where Walter Carpenter's story really hits home. He's worked for 55 years.
55 years. Wow.
Yeah, and, construction, agriculture, the ski industry, parking lots.
Jeez. A lot of different jobs.
A lot of different jobs, and mostly low-paying jobs with not great benefits.
That's got to be tough.
And when he was in his 50s, he got really sick with liver disease.
Oh, man.
And he lost his job at Stowe Mountain Resort, and that was a job that actually had some benefits, and he was making a little more than minimum wage.
Okay.
But after that, it was really hard for him to find another good full-time job.
Yeah, especially when you're older and dealing with health issues. It's like companies just aren't as eager to hire you.
Exactly. And there's this research by Lisa Berkman. She talks about the 50s as this like fork in the road.
Oh.
He calls it the fork decade. And she says if you're not in a stable full-time job by then, it gets really hard to find one in your 60s.
Right, you fall behind.
Yeah, and she says that's when economic inequalities become really obvious.
That makes sense. The longer you're working, the more those gaps kind of widen.
Yeah, and Walter is a perfect example of that.
So what's his situation now?
So right now he's doing seasonal work at Mad River Glen and Waterbury Center State Park.
Okay, so he's bouncing around.
Yeah, he's piecing it together, and he's living in a rent-subsidized apartment, which helps, but things are still really tight financially.
Yeah.
He has to pay for his Medicare supplement and his Medicare Part B deductions, and then there's the cost of keeping his car running.
All right. He needs that to get to work.
Yeah, he has a 2015 Subaru Forester, and he actually had to dip into his retirement savings to pay for some car repairs recently.
That's a bad sign.
It is, and it's pretty common, actually. One of the articles said that like 1 in 5 people over 50 have no retirement savings at all.
Wow, that's scary.
Yeah, and a survey from 2023 showed that retirement account balances are actually going down for low-income workers.
So it's not just a few people here and there, it's a whole segment of the population.
Exactly, and this whole thing with more older people having to work longer, it has ripple effects.
Yeah, for sure.
Like it puts more pressure on younger generations.
Right, because they might end up having to support their parents or grandparents financially.
No, exactly. And it's changing the whole makeup of the workforce.
How so?
Well, the article said that older people are making up a bigger part of the workforce, while younger people like 16 to 24-year-olds are working less.
Interesting. So they're maybe focusing on school or other things.
Yeah, or taking a different path altogether.
That's a pretty big shift.
It is, and it's creating challenges and opportunities.
Like what?
Well, states like Vermont, they have this big population of older workers.
Right.
But they're also dealing with worker shortages.
Interesting. So they need to find ways to support those older workers and keep them in the game.
Exactly. And some places are getting creative, like the Trapp Family Lodge.
Yeah.
They're specifically targeting retirees for part-time jobs.
Okay.
And they're calling it like play money.
Play money. I like that.
Yeah, it's like a fun way to make some extra cash.
Right.
And then there's the Clara Martin Center. They're offering flexible work arrangements like part-time and lots of time off to attract and keep older workers.
So it's about recognizing the value that older workers bring and making it work for both sides.
Yeah, and then there's Japan.
Oh, Japan. Yeah, they have a lot of older people working, right?
They do. Like 1 in 4 people 65 and older were working in 2022.
Wow.
And like 80% of them want to keep working after retirement age.
That's wild.
Yeah, and their government is actually encouraging companies to hire older people.
Interesting.
And they're even talking about raising the mandatory retirement age.
Oh, wow.
And they're using technology like robots to help older workers.
Wow. So they're really adapting to an aging workforce.
They are. And then the articles talked about some potential solutions here in the U.S.
Like what?
Well, one idea is auto-IRAs.
Oh, yeah, I've heard of those.
Yeah, so these are supposed to make it easier for people to save for retirement.
So how do they work?
So basically, they automatically take a little bit of money out of your paycheck.
Correct.
And put it into an IRA, usually invested in stocks and bonds.
Gotcha.
And the idea is that by making it automatic, people are more likely to save.
Yeah, it takes the thinking out of it.
Exactly, and it's not a big hassle for employers.
Right, so it could be good for small businesses or people who don't have retirement plans through work.
Right, and Vermont actually passed a law in 2023 allowing auto IRAs.
Right.
And a lot of other states are doing the same thing.
So it's catching on.
California has almost everyone participating in their auto IRA program.
Wow. So it seems like it's working.
Yeah, and the early results are promising. The Pew Charitable Trusts says over 1 million people have saved over $1 billion through auto IRAs since 2018.
That's a good start.
Yeah, and a survey in Illinois showed that low-wage workers are really happy with their auto IRA program.
So it's helping people who really need it.
It is, and it's interesting because Walter Carpenter actually wrote a letter back in 2017 advocating for state-sponsored retirement plans.
Really?
Yeah, he said he knows what it means to lose hope of retirement because of things he couldn't control.
That's powerful.
It is, and it shows how personal this issue is.
Yeah, for sure.
But the articles also point out that auto IRAs might not be a quick fix for everyone.
Right, especially for people who are already close to retirement age or even past it.
Yeah, they just don't have as much time to build up their savings.
Makes sense.
So getting back to Walter right now, he's working at Mad River Glen, and it's tough. He's doing dishes all day. He's on his feet constantly.
Right, and with his knee and his hip and everything.
Yeah, it's got to be painful.
Yeah.
And he's doing what he can to save money, like eating half-priced food from the kitchen.
That's smart.
But what's really amazing is that he's still so involved in politics.
Really?
Yeah. He spends his mornings writing letters about things like single-payer health care and gun control.
Wow, so he's not letting his situation get him down.
Not at all. He's even gotten responses from Bernie Sanders and Patrick Leahy and Peter Shumlin.
That's cool.
It is, but he's still worried about the future. You know, he knows there's going to come a time when he physically can't do this work anymore. And it's got to be tough seeing his high school classmates retired and comfortable while he's still struggling.
I bet.
But he's still saving what he can.
Good for him.
And maybe he can switch to a less demanding job at some point.
Yeah, like maybe a cashier or something?
Yeah, like his colleague Ron Anderson. He's 81, and he used to work in advertising.
Okay.
Now he works at the ski resort just for the social aspect and a free lift ticket.
That's nice.
It is. But Walter's right when he says someone who's worked for 55 years should be able to retire.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the article ends with him finishing his shift and getting ready to come back the next day.
Wow. So it's like this cycle just keeps going.
It does, and it really highlights the reality for so many older Americans.
Yeah, so as we wrap this up, the big takeaway for you guys listening is that retirement is changing.
Mm-hmm.
For a lot of people, it's not that simple anymore.
Right. It's not just about hitting a certain age and calling it quits.
Exactly. There are all these economic factors, and people are living longer.
And Walter Carpenter's story is such a powerful example of that.
It shows a human side of these trends.
Yeah, the struggles, the resilience, and just the desire for a secure retirement after working so hard for so long.
Definitely. And it makes you wonder what can be done to make things better.
Right. Like, what about solutions beyond just saving more and working longer?
Yeah. Like, how can we create a system where everyone has a chance at a decent retirement?
These are big questions.
They are. And they're questions that we all need to be thinking about.
Absolutely. And we hope this deep dive has given you some food for thought.
Yeah, definitely.
Thanks for listening.
Thanks, everyone.